Finally, the time has come. You no longer have to choose between conventional medicine and alternative medicine. Today, unlike years past, your team of doctors from all disciplines are working together side by side for the benefit of you, the patient, to help you regain your health and cross the bridge.
Hi, welcome back to the Bridge to Health. My name is Dr. Tom Dow, and each week we try to have a guest from a different healthcare discipline who's a member of our healthcare team that works for you, the patient, to try to give you the best that each discipline has to offer. As I've talked about in previous shows, we kind of work on the model of the wheel of health. And if you imagine a wheel with 5 spokes, each spoke has to be tight and strong for that wheel to roll perfectly straight and not wobble. The 5 spokes of our health wheel are proper nervous system function, which our chiropractic and neurological staff takes care of, proper exercise, proper mental state, proper rest, and proper nutrition. If any one of these areas in your life are weak, then that will cause your health wheel to wobble, and that wobbling over time will cause the other spokes to start to become weak, and eventually all the spokes become weak, and that wheel no longer functions. Your body works exactly the same way. As a perfect example, if you go to the chiropractor 3 days a week and you get adjusted and you make sure that your nervous system is functioning perfectly, but you're depressed, and because you're depressed, you eat a lot of food and you become overweight. And because you're overweight, you now herniate a disc in your lower back. And because you've herniated a disc in your lower back, you don't want to exercise because it hurts. And you're up all night because you can't sleep. So you can see how one spoke affects the other spoke. And in our healthcare facilities located in Melville, Hicksville, Ronkonkoma, and Medford, we have specialists in each one of those spoke fields to help you, the patient, when you walk through our door, to give you the best possible chance of recovering from your health issues and not just treating you one little body part at a time. We all work as a team and constantly talk to each other. One of the people I talk to all the time in my office is our guest today, Dr. Michelle Hausman, who's a clinical psychologist. Hi, Dr. Hausman. Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Dow.
So great to have you here with me. We've been friends for many, many years. And you've done phenomenal work with, in our office and with our patients. And I want to thank you for that, first of all.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me. This is going to be fun and interesting.
Absolutely. So let's start off, and let's, can you tell the audience the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist?
Certainly I can, and it's important for people to know that.
Yes.
This way, when they have issues and they need help with them, they'll know which routes or what's the best way to go.
Right.
So, historically, psychiatry was all there was. So it became a branch of medicine. So people would get a degree, an MD in medicine, and then they would specialize in psychiatry. The father of the field being Sigmund Freud. He has that white bushy beard, so people tend to remember him that way, and you envision him like sitting at the head and somebody lying on a couch. So he would do what was called at that time, talk therapy. And discuss with people and try to get at the bottom of their unconscious conflicts.
Right. He would go back to their childhood and things like this, right?
Precisely. Their childhood, their defenses, all this kind of interesting thing. So he would spend an hour or so talking to a patient. Over time, more recently, especially the last 20 years or so, psychiatry has evolved to specialize in mostly medication management.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, they really don't do the therapy, the one-to-one therapy, especially the new doctors who've come out in the last 20 years or so. They really just do the medication management. We have this whole pharmaceutical development, right, that's come about,
yes.
Where we have medications now which were unheard of, not even thought of many years ago. So psychology is a field that's developed in the interim that now takes over that role, that takes over the role of speaking with the patient, either one-on-one or in groups or educationally or in terms of a team like we have in the Melville office, or in clinics, hospitals. to work specifically and directly with the patients and with the other doctors to discuss the overall care of the patients.
Right. So, if the audience, there's a patient out in the audience right now, and they're not sure where to go, and they've heard from one friend, oh, you should go to a psychologist, another friend, oh, no, you need medication, you should go to a psychiatrist. Is it fair to say that probably their best step is to start with a psychologist? Because the psychologist, if the psychologist does the intake on the patient and feels there's a need for psychiatric intervention, you two could both work together at the same time, both the psychiatrist and the psychologist, right?
Absolutely, and optimally we like to see that, right? Optimally, I think you're right, to have a psychologist do the initial intervention, to discuss, to do the intake. It's a very thorough evaluation, at least mine is. It takes about an hour. We discuss all aspects of the person's life.
Right.
So medication can be a piece of treatment.
Right.
Right? And is often very important.
Right.
Sometimes just initially and sometimes chronically.
Right.
The only other time I would say that it's important to see a psychiatrist first or immediately is if it's like a safety issue.
Right,
if the person's in jeopardy of hurting themselves or someone else.
Right,
if there's an issue where their functioning is so poor, like they can't get out of bed or they can't go to work, they're not sleeping or eating, where it's so poor that we need to first kind of...
They can't even get to you to see you. Yeah.
Right, so we really need to first stimulate them being functioning. Then the therapy can take place. And often over time, with therapy, people are able to reduce the number of medications, the amount of medications that they take.
This is, again, another similar analogy to what we do in our pain management practice as chiropractors. We first try conventional, what we call non-invasive treatments, such as chiropractic adjustments, electric stim, ultrasound, conservative, measures, and we try to get them better with that. But sometimes they're so badly injured, we need to send them to a pain management doctor who uses pain medication. He may use injections, and he may use that for a brief period of time until we get them over the hump, and then they come back to us and we continue with our treatment, our corrective treatment. So this is kind of what you do sometimes when a patient comes to see you, and you go, oh man, they need a little more than just me talking to them. They might need a little help with some meds. And you talk, and you send them to a psychiatrist, and I'm sure you're communicating with that psychiatrist.
Absolutely.
Every day on your patient. You're both working together, right?
Absolutely.
Right. This is the best thing for the patients to know, that we're all working together.
Yeah, the best health care is team health care.
Right. I would venture to guess, you folks in the audience, that if you're seeing multiple doctors, if you're seeing your family internist or GP, and then you're also seeing a neurologist, and you're also seeing an ortho, and you're also seeing a rheumatologist, I would venture to guess they probably don't talk to each other too much or at all. And there's probably things that would be important for all of them to know to give you better treatment and better health care. Will you agree with that, Dr. Hasman?
Oh, of course I do. It's one of the wonderful things that I enjoy about working with people is because as a psychologist, I really do work holistically.
Right.
So as opposed to a podiatrist who sees the person as a toe, right?
Right.
I see the entire person. So when people come into me, they often talk about their medical issues, their medical health care problems.
Right.
And so they'll talk about the doctors that they've seen or the issues that they're having. And then I can help the person see as a whole how that's affecting them, or how those pieces are either working together or against each other. Sometimes they don't realize if they see this specialist and that specialist, they're actually working against each other.
That happens sometimes, right?
It does happen.
Yeah.
It does happen. Or that the issue that's central to all of it is not being addressed at all.
Right.
So, for example, when I was years ago working in the VA in Northport, one of the rotations I had was working with the new medical interns. So the medical intern would go and see the patient, do an initial evaluation, right? And then come to me and say, this is what they said, and this is what I want to do. So, for example, the person said they've been having stomach aches for a couple of months now, so I want to prescribe some kind of stomach medication. Okay? I can't think off the top of my head what. And I would say, well, when did it happen? When did it start? 2 months ago. Well, what happened 2 months ago in the patient's life? And the intern would say, I have no idea. I'd say,
exactly.
Well, go back and find out. And they'd come back and say, well, oh, 2 months ago, their parent died. Oh, so maybe it's not that the stomach is the issue. Maybe they're mourning and grieving. And if we treat that, then we don't need the medication for the stomach.
So let's get into that a little bit. 'Cause that kind of explains everything that we do in a multidiscipline center where we all work together.
That's right.
Because many people don't realize that mental issues can directly cause physical problems, such as the example you just brought up might cause excessive firing of nerves in the lining of the stomach, which produce too much acid. And it's caused by a mental condition, which then causes a physical malfunction in the body. And so when they go to the internist and he does a test, oh, your stomach acid level's too high, we're going to give you Zantac, or we're going to give you something
That's it, a Prilosec.
to decrease the acid. There's reasons why it's like that.
That's right. And by not addressing those reasons, the Prilosec is like a Band-Aid.
Right.
It's symptom treatments, which is the same as we were talking about with psychiatry before.
Right.
It's symptom treatments. But if we don't get to the roots or the cause of the problem, then we're just putting Band-Aids on things, right? So yes, we don't want people to be uncomfortable. Clearly, if they're having stomach burning issues, we want them to have relief from that. And if the medication provides it, terrific. Same with psychiatry. If a person is in such a deep clinical depression, we clearly want them to have relief of their symptoms.
Right.
However, psychology is so important because it gets to the heart of the matter.
Right.
And getting to that can clear up the problem so
The
that
root, the cause.
Yeah, so that the chemicals are not needed. Sometimes which they're, you know, there's, oh look, we always have to weigh, right, when we give a medication. There are always benefits from the medication and there are side effects.
Right.
So we always have to, to weigh, like, are the benefits more important than the potential negative side effects?
Right.
Right? When they are, then clearly we give it. But there are usually side effects. So we want to try, as you said before, the least intrusive, right?
Right.
And the most natural way of approaching a problem.
Well, there are not only just side effects, but there's rebound from trying to come off these medications sometimes.
Yes.
So this is interesting, and most people don't realize this, is that let's say you take a pain medication. Let's say you take a Percocet. Let's say you take a Vicodin, and you take it for 3, 4, 5 months. Mm-hmm. If you took it and your pain level before you started taking it on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no pain, 10 being bad pain, when you first started taking it, your pain level was, let's say, a 7. Mm-hmm. As you start to get better with conservative treatment, massage, acupuncture, chiropractic, what happens is, if you try to stop taking that medication, your brain gets tricked into that you have more pain. This has been documented and proven. So as you come off this medication, your pain level might go up to, let's say, an 8 or a 9, and then once you get off that medication and it gets out of your system, it drops back down to where it really is. And that's why opioids are so addictive, because people, when they try to get off them, they actually think they're in more pain than they were before they started them. And it's really the brain playing tricks on you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah,
so this is interesting, and I got a whole list of questions here and things that you gave me to go over. I don't even know if we'll get to these. I'm having so much fun.
It's terrific. You know what? In some ways, the information that needs to come out will come out as we speak.
Yes.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit before we get into this other stuff. Let's talk a little bit about pain and your role in our center with people in pain. Many of our patients have had traumas. They've had slips and falls, they've had car accidents, they've had sports injuries, whatever. And they come to me on initial intake, and some of the questions I ask them are you having difficulty sleeping? Are you having anxiety when you get back in that car, even if someone else is driving? Are you having nightmares? Are you having flashbacks to the accident? Do you seem more jumpy when you hear loud noises? And that triggers me, thanks to you, from teaching me these triggers, that they may need to have some work and analysis done by you to help them deal with those things. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of explain to the audience exactly what you do to help people deal with the trauma, like say a car accident, and all these things? Some of the things, many of the things they experience psychologically as a result of that accident.
Certainly, certainly. It's a tall order, and I'm ready to take it on.
Okay.
So we started talking about pain, and then we also started talking about some of the other things that can be a result of the car accident, right?
Yes.
So pain is from the physical injury that they sustain,
right.
Yes. And then these other symptoms like anxiety, nervousness in the car, whether they're driving as a passenger, flashbacks, which means re-experiencing of the accident, right? Which is very different from a memory. It's actually feeling like you're going through it again. intrusive thoughts, which is you could be doing something entirely different, like filling out your checkbook, and all of a sudden you're thinking about the accident.
Right.
Thinking, not remembering or re-experiencing. Those are called intrusive thoughts. Then we have things like nightmares. People know what that is. And then there's somatic issues, right, in the body. So,
Somatic meaning?
somatic means stuff that's like in the body, what I feel, a feeling.
Right.
Right? So that can be pain, like in your knees or in
Right.
your back.
Right.
It can be stomach acid. It can be headaches.
Right.
It can be
Hyperventilation.
tension. It can be feeling shortness of breath or tightening of your breathing, right? So we call those somatic. Those are like bodily sensations. Okay, so those are also coming up, things like this, when we have an accident, because it's triggered by our emotional response.
Right.
Okay, so our emotional response really controls our somatic feeling. So, okay, let's start with this.
Okay.
The brain, the physical brain, right, is the information highway of all the messages that the body's sending us.
Yes.
Right? But who controls the brain? We control the brain.
Right.
This amorphous I.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
This me that we
Yes.
don't know what this is. It's
Yep.
a sense of self, right? It's who I am. It's my personality. I'm in control of my brain to a large extent. Right? We know this, you know, the old stories of the Himalayan monks, right, who can walk across coals or
Yes.
slow down their breathing,
Yeah,
right?
oh, yeah.
Okay, so we know that when we try, we can control our breathing, right? We can put ourselves to sleep. We can feel, if we feel hungry, but then distract ourselves, we no longer feel hungry. The body may still be hungry, but we don't feel hungry anymore.
Right.
So we have a lot of control over our brain. So one of the things that I teach the patients that we work with, you and I, is first off, that we have a lot of control over our brain. But we have to choose to use it. We have to understand that we can, and then we have to know how to do that. Okay?
Right.
So, when there's an injury,
Right.
okay, let's go back to what we were talking about before. The connection between injury and mental or behavioral health.
Right.
And is there a connection?
Right.
I think on some kind of gut level, we've always known that there was a connection,
Yes.
but in more recent times, the research proves it over and over and over. And not so long ago, I would say within the past year, the AMA, the American the American Medical Association, came out with documentation that says that a large percentage of all medical problems are either caused, increased, or somehow connected to mental and psychological health. And we're talking a large percent. I think they gave something like an 85%, which is tremendous for the medical association to say this. Okay, so which means that we have a large responsibility and ability to change what's happening in our body.
Right.
Often when I tell people this, they'll say to me, like when they come in for car accidents, we're talking about, right? They say, but I broke a bone, right? How can a broken bone have anything to do with the way I think or feel or act, right? I say, okay, so maybe the bone broke, right? But how did you break it? Let's say it wasn't a car accident. Let's say you were skateboarding and you weren't wearing your pads.
Right.
That's behavioral, right? Let's say you did break it in something like a car accident. How you take care of it is 100% related to the type of person you are. Are you going to go to the hospital? Are you going to follow up with the orthopedist? Are you going to seek chiropractic care? Are you going to go according to the treatment protocol? So let's say you, Dr. Dow, say you need to come in 3 times a week initially.
Right.
That's a behavior issue if a person comes in 3 times a week or they come in once and cancel all the time.
Absolutely.
Right? So that is going to depend on how fast a person heals.
Right.
Right? So the bone is broken. I'm not saying that's psychological.
Their mental state will affect
Depends.
how they're going to heal.
Almost 100%.
Absolutely.
Almost 100%.
Well, there's been many instances that I've heard or read about in which they've done studies on people with different disorders, cancer, chronic illnesses, and they've compared groups that are negative and groups that are positive, and the differences in their response to treatment is phenomenal when you compare the two.
You mean negative and positive, their attitudes?
Yeah, negative
Yes.
and positive attitudes.
Yes, yes. I just read a study recently that showed that people who have a positive attitude about aging, and we're all getting to that stage,
Yeah.
right? The eyes start to go, and right, I'm like, I don't want to use my glasses, yeah?
Yeah.
A little vanity comes in. But people who have a positive attitude about aging live longer.
Sure.
More
So not worrying about dying.
more than if they lower their cholesterol or if they, level out their blood sugar.
Right.
Positive attitude about aging is more connected to longevity than anything else, right? So here's another terrific study that was done in the last couple of years. They studied different ethnicities in some of the major American cities. So they studied Caucasians and African Americans and Asians. And they were looking at the issue of longevity. Who lives the longest, right? So they found out that Asian people typically live longer, Caucasians second, and African Americans third. And so most people assumed it was genetic, even the people doing the study.
Right.
Said it has to be genetic. It's, right? It's their genes, it's their DNA. No, no, no. When they, looked at all the different pieces, they found what really correlates to longevity are behavioral issues. So in the study, the participants, the Asian people, smoked the least, exercised the most, right? Took the least amount of medications, had the healthiest diets, right? And so that's why it was the behavioral piece that led to longevity and healthy life.
Right.
Not the genes, not hereditary.
Right. So you in the audience, I like to make one really important point at this point, is that professionals such as Dr. Hausman being in our offices is crucial to our patients achieving optimal health and crossing that bridge and getting to the other side. Here's a perfect example. I had a patient referred to me probably, I want to say, 2 or 3 years ago. They'd been to multiple doctors, they had a car accident, continued pain, nothing helped this patient, no treatment. So we started to go to work on the patient, and we could see through our re-evals and things that this patient was making progress orthopedically, chiropractically, but they didn't feel any better. And I started to go into some issues about their interactions since their accident with their families, with their husbands, how they felt about not being able to work. And at that point, I knew right away this patient needed to be referred to Dr. Hausman. And so what I'd like you to talk about now is that there's probably thousands or hundreds of thousands of patients out there who have had an injury, who have had a chronic injury, they're still in pain, that have still tried everything. How you, in your practice, help those patients feel better physically with the doctors they're treating with, and how you help them cope with a lot of those issues.
Terrific. Thank you for bringing me back to that. I got a little lost in the whole how it's connected. This is exciting stuff. I enjoy teaching people about this. It's exciting for me. So how do I help them? So specifically with pain, there are many ways that we can help people control pain outside of the medication that they're receiving from other people. So one is to understand that we have some control over the amount of pain we're experiencing.
Right.
Right? I'm not going to heal the bone, but I can help you to be more or less aware of the pain that you're feeling.
Right.
Okay? Most techniques start with diaphragmatic or deep breathing, right? And maybe we can do some of that later if we have time. We can show some of our viewers how to do that, right? That's always like a very easy but essential technique. So when we learn how to breathe and relax, right? First, tension pulls on everything, right? So if we're tense here or here, it's pulling on our spine.
Right.
So if we have a back injury, it's going to hurt more when we're tense, right? Even this position is a little tense, right? So to learn how to breathe, how to relax, and how to refocus our mind, which takes the mind off of the pain.
Right.
So it's called the gate control theory of pain. In our head, we have something called the horn dorsal. So it's the place in the brain where the messages that go up through the spine and into the lower brain stem, right, and then into the brain. The message of pain comes from our body. Oh, I'm hurt.
Right.
Gets into the brain. The brain says, I'm hurt.
Right.
Right. Then it's up to us if we want to pay attention to that message or not.
Right.
Now, we want to, especially initially, because that's how we know we're hurt. Otherwise, we don't know. It
protects us.
Right? Yeah. So it protects us. So we have to pay attention to pain messages because they tell something important. So we have to know that we're hurt, and then we have to follow up on it appropriately through treatment. Right? But then the pain becomes interfering often in our lives.
Right.
Then the pain isn't giving us information, it's interfering.
Right. And then there are other methods, which we'll get into in our next show, on how you work with those patients, such as breathing, on how to control those let's say, hyper-intensive signals, which may not, the pain that they're having physically might not be there all 100%, and it might be how they're interpreting it and how they can control it. So our next show, we're going to get into a lot of that, and hopefully some of the stuff we were going to get into. But we're about to wrap up. Could you just let the audience know, do you have a website?
I don't have a website.
Okay, can you let the audience know how they can contact you, a phone number if they have questions or they want to come and speak to you?
Certainly, certainly. So you can contact me on my phone, which is 516-885-6776, 516-885-6776. I am, if you Google me, Michelle Hausman, Hausman, I'll come up that way with my telephone and an email and information. I also just quickly want to let them know about some valuable resources. So there's the Suffolk County Psychological Association, which is a website that has a Find a Therapist tab, so you can look up psychologists that way. Also the NYSMA, which is the New York State Psychological Association. All of these are ways to find psychologists if you need them.
Excellent. And obviously, Dr. Hausman could also be contacted through our Melville office, and we can get you in touch with her directly from there. And if you have any questions, she's always more than happy to talk with you. Again, I want to thank you, Dr. Hausman. Thank you for coming back. We're going to have you back on our next show. For those of you watching us on Madhousetv, stay tuned. We'll be right back. For those of you watching us on Cablevision, we'll see you next time. And remember one very important thing. If what you're looking for is real wealth, join us next time on The Bridge to Health.
Finally, the time has come. You no longer have to choose between conventional medicine and alternative medicine. Today, unlike years past, your team of doctors from all disciplines are working together side by side for the benefit of you, the patient, to help you regain your health and cross the bridge.
Hi, welcome back again to the Bridge to Health. My name is Dr. Tom Dow. Each week we have a special guest from a different healthcare discipline who is part of our healthcare team in all of our office locations to help you, the patient, have the best and optimal chance of getting well from whatever ails you. We look at the whole person as a whole, not just little parts to see if we can fix this one, fix that one. We have specialists that look at all the parts, and we constantly are consulting amongst each other to give you the best care possible. So on our last show, we had Dr. Michelle Hausman, who's here again with us. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
And we talked a lot about many different things, and one of the last things we talked about was about pain and how you come in as a key player with our patients who we're treating for pain through different disciplines and how you help them. So can you kind of like just tell us a little bit about what you actually do with the patients and the tools and the techniques and the mechanisms by which a patient will come in to see you after sustaining a trauma and having pain, and what you actually do with them and how you help them?
Certainly, Dr. Dow. So we started talking a little bit about, first I educate them as to what pain is, what the message of pain is, so we can understand the function or the role of pain. We spoke a little bit about that in the last episode.
Right.
Once we understand what the function of pain is, then I can help the patient to understand how to best meet the body's need.
Well, the audience who's listening to this right now, I'm sure there's people out there who are saying, function of pain, what the heck is she talking about? I hate pain. I wish it wasn't even there. Can you try to tell them what the function of pain is?
Yeah, you know, we have a lot of different feelings, and so some of them are negative and don't feel good, like pain or like depression or anxiety. We have a lot of great feelings that feel wonderful, like happiness and joy and excitement. But all our feelings are there for a reason. They're there for information. That's why we have feelings. Feelings give us information about what we are experiencing in the world. Okay? So once we understand that, then emotions take on a whole different role. Then we don't just have to kind of accept what we're feeling and just suffer with it. Then we understand that, wait a minute, our body's trying to tell us something. And because we have to work with our bodies, right? I, the me, that is me, has to work with this because this is what's keeping me here, right? We have to work together. So feelings or emotions are one way of the body giving us messages about how we are in our environment, what's happening with our situation. So pain specifically is the body's way of telling us that we're hurt, that the body is injured. Right. So while we may hate feeling pain, it's important to know that. Imagine those people who when they're cuts, they don't feel it and they're bleeding. That's dangerous. You need to know if you're bleeding because you need to stop it.
Right.
If we have a back injury and we do too much,
right, the
pain tells us, hello, you're doing too much, stop what you're doing. So we need to listen to pain, but we don't need to sit in it. Right. Just like when we have a loss in our family, we feel sadness and grief, right, and we mourn, and that's appropriate. But if it carries on for too long, it becomes inappropriate mourning, right, or inappropriate grief, and then we're living in sorrow.
Right.
That's not appropriate either.
Right. And it can be detrimental or life-threatening if it continues.
It absolutely
on your
can.
mental state, right?
100%, right? So we need to hear the messages that our body gives us and then act appropriately for our best health, medical, mental, psychological, cognitive, all of that. But we don't need to live in it. Once we have the message, then we don't need to keep hearing it.
Right.
So, for example, right, with pain,
right,
pain gives us a message, so we need to hear it. We need to act appropriately by seeking treatment and taking care of ourselves.
Right.
But we don't need to live in feeling it.
Right.
So what we do to do that, we distract ourselves with proper breathing, relaxation, cognitive restructuring, which means thinking about things differently, right? And finding ways to enjoy our life and to change the way we do things with the condition we have.
Right.
Not to shut down and not do anything.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've tried to teach my patients for many, many years that our bodies were made through a tremendous, fantastic, marvelous design.
So complicated.
So complicated that we, even with all of our knowledge today, we have, maybe we understand 2% of what the brain actually does.
Right.
If that.
Action.
Okay. And I try to explain to my patients that every symptom we have, there's a reason for that symptom.
Exactly.
You have pain, you have muscle spasm, you have inflammation, because that's what your body does to protect you. If you have pain, let's say you twist the knee, and now you tear ligaments in your knee. You'll have pain. That'll stop you from walking on your knee, so it has a chance to heal. You'll have inflammation and swelling and muscle spasm to kind of make that knee not move, kind of like putting a caster in your leg, but your body does it itself. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a lot of times, the first thing we try to medically is tried to be done is they give you medications to get rid of those symptoms when they're there for a reason.
Right.
We have. I tell my patients, okay, your son's throwing up. He has 101 fever, and he's got a fever. The first thing that the parent wants to do is give them something to bring the fever down and stop them from throwing up. There's a reason why we throw up.
Right.
If we have bacteria or viruses in our digestive tract, in our stomach, which are multiplying at a geometric rate, our body's trying to get them out of us.
That's right.
And now we take a medication that keeps them in us so they can multiply more and make us sicker. But there was a research study done where they found that the white blood cells, which are the cells of the body that engulf bacteria, that for every degree body temperature above 98.6, they're able to engulf 10 times more bacteria. They actually become more stickier, the white blood cells. Diarrhea, we're trying to get that stuff, those bacteria out of our system. And if we take the first approach of just giving a medication to stop the symptom, which is there for a reason, sometimes it's detrimental.
That's
now,
right.
There are times when somebody's got 105 fever where you've got to bring it down or they're going to die.
Clearly, right.
There's times when you have a patient come into you or talk to you on the phone and say, well, you know what, I feel like ending my life. You're not going to talk to him. You're going to tell him, go to the ER, right? So they can get some medication and get it under control.
That's right.
So now they can come back to you and you can see them and work on the issues of why they felt like that in the first place.
That's right. So we use
right?
medications, whatever kind they are, appropriately. To
Time
help
and a
treat.
place.
That's right, right. But we want to do as much holistically as we can to be in control of our own body and in control of our thoughts. A lot of people think that we have no control over our thoughts and feelings, that they just are. But that's not true at all. That's, you know, that we have a brain that's physical, but the me that controls the brain is me. Right? So we do control our thoughts and feelings. Sometimes our thoughts go so fast that we can't catch them. And so all of a sudden we have a feeling we don't know why. So let's talk like anxiety right after a car accident.
Right.
So somebody's doing something that they're washing the dishes, and all of a sudden they feel anxious, and they don't know why they feel anxious. Right? But if they were able to, like, or trained by me, to slowly go back and see what was I thinking about when I was washing the dishes. Because we think all kinds of things when we're washing the dishes, right?
They may not be aware of it.
So maybe they heard some sound of the water splashing that reminded them of, let's say, the fire engine that came to hose down the scene. But they weren't conscious of the thought that they were thinking about that. But that produced anxiety. Then they feel anxious. They don't know why they're anxious. Then they feel more anxious because anxiety tells us we're in danger, and they're looking around. They're not in danger. They're at the kitchen sink.
Right.
Okay, that's inappropriate anxiety. So our job is to feel that, get the information from it, which is, in the case of anxiety, I feel like I'm in danger or threatened, right? And once we understand that's the function of anxiety,
right,
then am I in danger? Am I threatened right now? No, I'm safe in my home in the kitchen. Okay, so why am I feeling nervous? Let me go back. What was I thinking about? Right? Then if I can pinpoint what I was thinking about that felt dangerous or threatening, then we have choices. Can I do something about it? Or is it something that's happened in the past and therefore is beyond my control?
Right.
Right? And now let me remove the anxiety because I don't need it.
You teach them breathing techniques.
Right. So the breathing techniques come in to say, I don't need to feel anxious right now. I'm safe right now. Right. What I need to do is calm down and take care of myself. Right?
Right.
I have an injury, an illness, something terrible happening in my life.
Right.
But if I'm not coping right now with those things, then I need to be calm.
Right. And
so
I'm
that I
sure-
can think, so I
Right.
can cope.
I'm
So
sure
we-
that I'm sure there's times where they come back to see you the next week, and they say, "Well, this happened, and I felt this way, and I tried to do what you said to do, and I couldn't pinpoint it." You probably talked to them and helped them try to pinpoint it, right?
Absolutely, and isn't it wonderful that they left and did that work during the week?
Right.
That's what I love to hear. I went home and I thought about it, or I had an episode of anxiety and I tried to figure it out, or I did the breathing, but it didn't quite do it. And I'll say, okay, well, let's see what we can do to add to that, to give you more coping skills, to help you figure things out better next time. 100% people need to work in between the week. I mean, I see you for like...
You help them, give them tools, you come back, you help them refine those tools or try to identify why the tool didn't work.
That's right. Keep building and building, and then see what it is about their life that continues to create this aggravation that's happening.
So I have a challenging question for you, which isn't on your sheet.
Yes, sir.
You'll have surprises, I know. So I've had patients come in to me who have had traumatic injuries, and they come in, and sometimes they come into my office and they're in tears. Sometimes I feel like I'm a psychologist with the things they tell me, and
Sure,
sometimes I
people
can't
talk to
believe the
you.
things they tell me.
Yeah.
And it's very common that I hear things such as, since my accident, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's too painful, I can't, and my husband is upset with me. And we don't have the relationship we had before the accident. And he's complaining that the house isn't clean, and he's complaining that we can't be intimate and things like this. This is probably very common after a car accident, right? Or after a trauma.
Sure.
How it affects the whole family.
Absolutely.
I can't
Yeah.
pick up my 2-year-old like I used to.
Sure. All right, I can't play.
How do you
I-
help them deal with
I
that?
can't play, I can't drive, I can't...
How do you
right?
help them deal with that?
You know, helping people deal with their everyday life, including what's happening in their life, like an injury or an accident or something like that, is essential. Because if the home life falls apart, then it affects everybody.
Then they're more stressed, they have more anxiety.
Sure. Oh, sure. When a parent in the house is not functioning properly, it affects absolutely everybody else. And intimacy, you know, that's an important topic too. We're not just talking about physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy.
Right.
Often when we're in pain or we're depressed or overly anxious, we're inside our own head.
Right.
Like we're in the pain or in the depression. And we can't be intimate with another person because we don't feel open. We don't feel like sharing. It's kind of like, you know, the thorn in the lion's foot, you know, he's licking
Right.
it, right? So we're like this because we're trying to protect ourselves. So that interferes with our ability to connect to other people.
Right.
And then it does suffer our relationship with our partner, our spouse, our children. I can't reach out to them. We're also become irritable when
Right.
we're in pain, right?
Right,
And
right.
so every little thing, right? The children are making noise,
Oh,
or
yeah.
a mess on the floor, everything is going to irritate me because I don't feel well.
Right,
So we help people first to understand that these are the patterns that come up.
right.
Right? Second, to understand that if they can control their thoughts and their feelings and work on controlling their level of pain, then they can be more available to the house and the family. And we talk about things like active coping, right? If you can't be on the floor with the kid, maybe you can bring stuff up to the table where you're sitting more comfortably.
Ah,
You know,
okay.
I worked with somebody who had the misfortune of having a spinal injury and was paralyzed from the waist down and wheelchair bound. And when the first springtime came along, she was beside herself because she was a gardener.
Right.
She planted, she weeded. This was her thing. I mean, she had this
Yeah.
gorgeous, you know, award-winning garden.
yeah.
And now she's wheelchair bound. She's devastated. Went into a terrible depression. So one of the things we work on is effective coping. So if you can't get down in the dirt, let's bring the dirt up to you.
Right, interesting.
Let's have a planting table over your wheelchair where you can come up and put things in planters, even those planters now that dissolve in the earth. So
Right.
somebody else can stick it in the earth, but you've done all the arranging. You've
Right.
done all the, okay. So coping, how to cope effectively, how to do things that you normally need to do, but in a way that's safe for your body and that still lets you work in the world. And also, you know, a lot of people have trouble asking for help.
Uh-huh.
You know, do you know there's people, they'll help their neighbors, their friends, everybody, but when they need help, they're not so clear to ask for it. So when you're injured, that's a time to call in those favors, to call on people who you love and count on you. I need help picking up my 3-year-old. I need this, or can you help me with that?
So
Use our support
do you
systems.
ever bring the family unit in together and try to explain to them what's going on?
You know, I do. I often do work with families. Sometimes the treatment starts like that, you know, so there's marital therapy or family therapy. But sometimes the treatment starts with one person, and then it's, my wife doesn't understand what I'm going through. because I have internal pain, people don't see it, so it's
Right.
almost like they can't, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Or the anxiety or the trauma of it.
Right.
They can't see that. It's not a cast.
Right.
Can you have my wife come in and explain to her?
Right.
And I'm happy to do that because then we work together as a group to say, how can we help this family function better? How can we help them reconnect?
I love it when I have a patient come in who's been in chronic pain for a long period of time, and they get in grief from their spouse or they get in grief from their kids. And they can't drive them around like they used to, and the spouse comes out and says, "Oh, it's all in your head." And guess what? It is, because that's where we feel things, right?
Right. Yes, but we're not making it up.
Right, but when people use that word, it's all in your head, they think they're
Yes.
fabricating it.
No, that's the difference.
To gain attention or whatever. I'm sure that does happen on occasion, but not the majority of the time.
Not the majority of people.
And it is something that's happening in the brain. And a perfect example would be, let's say a woman or a man, doesn't matter, that is in chronic pain, and the spouse complains, "You don't look at me the same way. You don't rub my back the same way. You don't rub my hair the same way." And they don't think that, well, maybe the person's not doing that because they're afraid that you'll think that I want to be intimate and I don't want to get hurt.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because being intimate and being intimately as a team starts by eye contact, starts by caressing, things like that. And I would get, I don't know, I'm just hypothesizing right now, but I would guess a lot of people shut down emotionally if they're in real severe pain because they don't want to take the chance that that might happen. Am I right?
100%, yes, certainly. So people do shut down. And then other people don't understand that, or they take offense.
They think they did something wrong,
Right.
or they think they don't love them anymore.
That's right.
Things like that, right?
Right, and that's incorrect. So often family work can be important to help understand these patterns that are developing that are unhealthy patterns of interacting. Right? So to kind of summarize, we talk about our thoughts and how thoughts lead to feelings, right? We talk about our feelings and how feelings lead to what we do, our behaviors, our actions.
Right.
And how our behaviors and our actions affect our relationships with other people and affects our ability to work or to be productive. So all these things are connected, much like that wheel that you use to talk about things. Right? All of this is connected. So in psychotherapy, we can address all of these different levels of being and how they're impacting on our life, on our health, on our situations at this moment, to work towards a healthier future and a more tolerance or a more ability to cope with our present.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you find ever that when you work with a psychiatrist, for instance, and the patient's on medication for different disorders, do you find sometimes it's hard to get them off those medications? How do you know? How do you know when it's time to cut back on a med? If you work with them, let's say 6 months, and you've taught them these coping mechanisms, do you have the conversation with the psychiatrist and say, look, I think the patient's doing better. We might want to consider cutting back the meds, or does the psychiatrist make that call based on what they do?
It's, again, that teamwork. So
Right.
when we get to that point in the therapy where a patient is showing signs of improved functioning, I try to give a patient as much autonomy as possible.
Right.
So if we talk about it, then they can go back and report to the psychiatrist or discuss with the psychiatrist their needs or what they're thinking. So how do we know people are getting better? That was
Right.
part of your question.
Yeah.
Very important question. So there are different ways of looking at that. One of them is subjective, which means the way I feel inside of me about myself.
Right.
Right? So if I'm feeling happier, healthier, more excited about life, more engaged.
Right.
Right? And I just generally have a better outlook on life. That's subjective. Those are my feelings.
Right.
Another way of looking at it is objectively. So this is somebody else looking at you, and they would look at your functioning. Are you engaging in good personal hygiene, showering, dressing? Are you doing your chores at the house, in the supermarket? Are you able to work at your job, or if you're a child in school, or if you're an adult going to school, can you do
Right.
homework? So these are all levels of functioning.
Okay.
When your level of functioning improves, that's a sign that you're getting better. So you're not only going to work, you're getting there on time.
Right.
You're getting all your tasks accomplished while you're there.
Right.
You feel like you can think better. Your boss is saying, hey, I notice you're doing better. You're not absent anymore.
Right.
Right? At home, the house is clean. You're going out with your friends. We don't talk much about socially, but that's important too. People who stay home and aren't social, they're not so healthy, right? We're social people, humans.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So we have two things: subjectivity, how I feel inside of myself,
Right.
and then objectivity, how is my level of functioning in the world, and what do other people say about me? Right? I'll ask people, so how does your husband think you're doing?
Right.
What's your son say about what's going on in the house now?
Right.
Has your boss made any comments? Right? So if we ask people in the world, your doctors, what are they saying about you? Right? If you have clergy or you have some religious thing, all of those opinions matter. I want to know what the doctor's thinking. I'll ask people we share in common. So what does Dr. Dow say about your progress? Does he feel like you're making progress in his treatments? Right? So when we see that people are doing better, internally I feel better,
Right.
and my functioning is improving, then we start talking about that. Well, you're doing better. What do you think about decreasing your pain medication, your anxiety medication, your depression medication? What do you think about that?
Right.
Right?
You'll
And
say that
then
to the patient.
we discuss it
Right.
because I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't make any decisions, but we discuss it.
Right.
And then they can go back to their prescribing professional and say, you know what, I've been doing a better job of controlling my pain.
Right.
Or I'm feeling much less depressed. Can we try cutting back on the medication and see what their prescribing professional thinks? And that's how we work towards that.
You know what I found? I've been in practice 32 years now, even though it looks like I've only been in practice like 5. No, only
It can't be 32. No, no, no.
And I found that in the earlier years of practice, when I was just in my own office as a chiropractor, and I refer people out to different specialists, and no communication at all. They did their thing, I did my thing. Is that if I suggested that to a patient, so maybe you're doing better, your range of motion is better, your strength is improving, maybe you don't need as much pain medication, maybe, and I would send them back to their doctor, and the patient would ask them that. Their doctors would tell them, the medication is why you're feeling better and you're doing better. So I swear, I'm not kidding.
Right.
And the bottom line is, when you're working with a team in the office, I've got my orthopedist in my office, I've got my pain management guy in the office, I've got my physical therapy staff there. We're not mine, but we're all working together as a team. They can watch on a daily basis how that person's doing as the pain medication is cut back. And if they see they're doing worse, they're going to see them the next week, because they see them anyway, they're in the office.
That's it.
And they can then modify it better. So they have a better eye at that point.
That's right. That's right. And back to what we talked about originally, psychiatry and psychology. Psychiatrists tend to see after the initial every 6 weeks or once every 3 months, whereas we see our patients once a week. So we definitely have more of an eye on them.
Right.
But I agree with the whole team approach. In my other office as well, I have 2 locations, one in Melville with you, and then one in Comac. And I practice there with a child psychologist. So she'll often treat the children, and I
Nice.
can treat the adults individually on their issues.
Speaking of children, guess who just walked into the studio?
Who do we have here today?
My son, KJ Dow. Why don't you come over, KJ?
Welcome, KJ.
Have a seat over here.
I will stay right here.
Oh, you want to stay right there? Okay. So I have a question for you, KJ. Being a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old grown man, I mean young man, you just got whacked playing baseball the other day, and your shins have lots of bruises. Show what these bruises look like.
What do we got
Look
there?
at
Oh,
those
boy.
bruises from baseball.
You did.
So when that hit you, it was a lot of pain, right?
Yeah.
Hold that up
So
there. I
it-
just knocked it off. It was a lot of pain, right? And did you feel like playing baseball right away, or you want to rest for a while?
I had a rest for a while.
Right. So pain's there for a reason, right?
Yeah.
To make you rest, to make sure you're okay. Right?
Yeah.
You want to say hi to anybody out in the audience there?
Hi, everybody.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Say hi to
Hey,
Mom.
Mom.
Aw, it's good to
Thanks.
see you, KJ.
I'll be back. I'll be over in a minute, okay?
Hope you
Okay.
heal quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, yeah, so pain is there for a reason, and I'm blessed to have you in our office, let me tell you.
Thank you so much.
Because my job becomes easier by you not only helping them deal with their pain issues and how to control them better, but I find the patients that you see, that I see at the same time, they're much more compliant for me.
Yes.
If I tell them they got to come in 3 times a week and you're working with them, you're reinforcing why. And if they're compliant, they have a much better chance of getting better than if they're not.
Absolutely.
Statistically.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I want to thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much
coming
for
back
having me.
and being my guest, and I hope to have you back again in a future date.
That would be my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, once again, thank you for watching The Bridge to Health. Hope you enjoyed our show. And if you want real wealth, join us next time on The Bridge to Health.